I've always enjoyed late-night walks. There's something about the stillness that makes everything feel simpler. I'm a heavy-duty mechanic by trade. Been doing it for over 35 years now. I live alone on a big ranch, just me and my dog, Rex. The house is too large for one person, but I never had the heart to downsize after my wife, Elena, passed away. My kids moved out years ago, and ever since cancer took her, it's just been me and Rex. At 58 years old, I figured I'd be winding down, not dealing with this kind of unsettled quiet. One night after a long day in the shop, covered in grease and diesel, I decided to go for a walk. My property is pretty big, so just a single loop is usually enough to satisfy my craving. The air was cool and crisp, and Rex trotted along beside me, his tail giving a soft thump against my leg every few steps. Sometimes I think he likes me more than I like him. I've walked that loop hundreds of times, but as I was heading back toward the house, something caught my eye. I glanced up at the second-story window, the one that looks out from the bedroom Elena and I used to share. For a split second, I thought I saw something move. A fleeting shadow, perhaps, or a curtain shifting. I stopped dead in my tracks, staring up at that window. There was no reason anyone should be in there. I hadn't been in that room in years, couldn't bring myself to. I felt my blood start to boil at the thought of some stranger breaking into my house. I wasn't going to stand for that. I rushed inside, my heart racing, and ran upstairs, taking the steps two at a time despite my aching knees. The room was empty, just like I'd left it. No sign of anything out of place. The dust on the furniture was undisturbed. I looked everywhere imaginable. In the closet under the old cedar chest, but found nothing. Yes, I was pretty freaked out, but I was more angry than anything. I didn't take this kind of thing lightly. I figured I had just seen something that wasn't there, a trick of the pale moonlight. I stood there for a while feeling foolish, running a hand through my thinning hair, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there. The next night, I woke up to Rex growling, a low, guttural sound that vibrated through the floorboards. He's a good dog. He never barks unless there's something to bark at. I sat up in my bed, listening, my ears straining in the pitch black. That's when I heard creaking coming from upstairs. It could have just been the sounds of my old house settling in the cool air, but my mind went directly to footsteps, which were coming from right above me. I'm sure you could guess which room is directly above mine. I debated grabbing my hunting rifle from downstairs, but didn't want to go that far. If it came down to it, I was fully confident that I could take whatever was up there hand to hand, drawing on years of manual labor strength. I grabbed my flashlight and went to check again. Nothing. The room was exactly the same, untouched. My anger was definitely starting to turn into anxiety at this point. Something didn't feel right in the house. It was a cold, creeping dread I couldn't ignore. The following night, I came downstairs to find the kitchen lights on. I know I turned them off before bed. I meticulously check everything before I sleep. I don't leave lights on. There was no question anymore. Someone was in my house. I started to panic. I called the police and told them I thought someone might be sneaking around. They came out, 2 young officers, searched the house from top to bottom, even checked the barn and the shed, but found nothing. They were nice about it, told me to call again if I needed them, but I could tell they didn't believe me. They left me with a pamphlet on home security. The next night was the worst by far. Couldn't sleep, so around 1 a.m., I decided to go upstairs and check the bedroom again. I don't know why. Maybe I thought facing the room would settle my mind, but when I opened the door, I froze. There were clothes scattered all over the floor, Elena's clothes. I had packed them away carefully in acid-free boxes after she died. Now they were everywhere. A delicate silk nightgown lay draped over the mahogany chair. Something like this doesn't just happen randomly. And then I saw her. There was a woman standing in the doorway, framed against the dark hall, just staring at me. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I could tell she wasn't Elena. She was too short, too slight. I don't know who she was, but she didn't belong there. I had never been so afraid in my life. Without thinking, I ran at her, fueled by rage and terror. She turned and bolted down the stairs and out the front door. By the time I got outside, she was gone. I searched the property with Rex, who was barking wildly, but there was no trace of her. I didn't sleep that night. For months after that, I couldn't sleep. I was constantly on edge, convinced I heard footsteps upstairs at night. Every little noise set me off. I slept with my rifle next to my bed, terrified that I'd have to use it one night. I debated calling my brother, Frank, to come stay with me, but I wasn't going to do that. I was raised to always handle my own problems, so that's what I did. The nightmare didn't end, though. One night, I was sitting in the living room, trying to read a trade magazine, when I noticed a figure standing in the yard, looking straight at me through the window. It was her again. My heart felt like it stopped beating. I grabbed my hunting rifle and ran outside, Rex close behind, snarling low. She was still there, just a silhouette in the moonlight watching me. I didn't hesitate. I fired a few warning shots into the air, the sound echoing across the fields, hoping to scare her off. That was enough to get her to turn and run, disappearing into the darkness toward the boundary line. But it's not like that made me feel any better. I was literally being tormented by some random woman who was probably deeply troubled. I couldn't even imagine why this was happening to me. I stood there for a long time, the rifle heavy in my hands, waiting to see if she'd come back. She never did. I haven't seen her since, but I know it's only a matter of time. I'm fully prepared to defend myself, but I don't think living in perpetual anxiety like this is sustainable. Thank God for Rex. I have no idea what I'd do without him. I'll send an update if anything happens. I work as a software developer for a major tech company, which means I'm often crunching deadlines and pulling late nights. I spend most of my time staring at lines of code, trying to debug systems. It's a high-pressure job, but the pay is good, even if the hours suck and my body clock is completely shot. By the time I get home, I'm either so wired from caffeine that I can't sleep, or I pass out the second I hit the bed and stay that way for 12 hours. I'm 28 years old, and I feel like I live on borrowed time. I was driving back home one night at like 3:30 a.m. It was nice to be driving my own car again, feeling the hum of the engine after a long silence in the office. As I was approaching my apartment complex, I realized I had probably had one too many energy drinks, and there was no way I'd be able to sleep yet. On top of that, I hadn't eaten a proper meal in hours, just vending machine snacks, and I was starving for something substantial. There's a 24-hour convenience store, the Quick Stop, right off the highway, about 10 minutes from my house. It's usually my first choice when it comes to late-night snacks since it's just so convenient and they have hot food. I'm not even one to gorge myself on fast food. I just occasionally get this weird craving that only a handful of fries or a microwaved burrito can satisfy. It's obviously 24/7, and I figured some comfort food would be the perfect thing to help me wind down from the code haze. I don't remember exactly what time it was, but it was definitely after 3 a.m. by the time I pulled into the parking area. There were a few cars ahead of me at the takeout window, which I was actually kind of surprised by. It's not like this Quick Stop was a busy spot at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. As I was sitting there impatiently, fiddling with my phone, I found myself staring off into space, wondering what was taking so long. That's when I noticed something strange. There was an old, beat-up hatchback with its windows tinted back into a spot in the very corner of the lot, nestled close to the dumpster. The Quick Stop itself was only accepting drive-through or takeout orders at this hour, so it didn't make sense why there'd be a car parked so deliberately in the main lot. There were reserved spots on the other side for employees, so it couldn't have been one of them. I figured it was maybe just someone eating in their car, which it probably was. I myself did that from time to time, preferring to eat alone. It was just an odd, slightly unsettling sight to be completely honest. I got my food, a bag of fries, and a cold soda, and started driving away. I didn't want to go home just yet, but I also didn't want to just sit there idling my car on the street. I began racking my brain trying to think of a good place to scarf down the food. I live in a pretty lush area, near the foothills, so there's honestly a lot of options. There's a massive state park literally down the street from my house. It's situated on a mountain and is essentially just an enormous forest. The kicker is that there's a scenic lookout point at the peak with a view of the city. There's a road that loops around the perimeter of the park and will take you right to the peak, which is nice during the day. After the park closes, though, the road is inaccessible to cars but still a convenient path to get to the peak without having to walk through any woods. I used to go there with my friends from college all the time. It was a default spot when we wanted to be outside or talk without being overheard. I actually hadn't been there in a while because I was just so busy working all the time, so I figured going there would deliver a much-needed nostalgia rush and a great view. When I got to the park parking area, it was completely empty. I say parking area because it wasn't a traditional parking lot with spaces for cars, but rather a big patch of gravel that veered off from one of the roads that ran past the park's border. Like I said, the actual park was closed, meaning I'd have to walk all the way up to the lookout spot from outside. Before I could even turn off the engine, I saw headlights pulling into the lot. That was unsettling enough on its own. Who else would be here at 3:30 a.m.? And then I realized what I was looking at. It was that same hatchback from the quick stop parking lot. I was 100% certain of it, recognizing the distinctive faded bumper sticker. I parked a little ways away, and the engine cut off. I felt the unease start to pour in. What were the odds of that happening naturally? Had they followed me? My window was partially rolled down, and as far as I could tell, there was no music coming from that car, or at least none that I could hear. After nothing happened for a good minute or so, my fear started to fade. I tried to rationalize it. They were probably doing the same thing. I was out for some fresh air or a smoke. It's a pretty popular spot for that kind of thing. But I was just so weirded out, considering how late it was and the strange coincidence. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, even though I concluded that it was just one of those unexplainable coincidences. I sat there for a minute, debating if I should just go home. I didn't want to leave having driven all this way, but I didn't want to be alone either. I picked up my phone and FaceTimed one of my close friends, Ethan, who lived a few minutes away. I told myself that if he didn't pick up, I'd just eat my food in the car and drive home immediately. He was actually awake, though, which I was a little surprised by. He said he had been working on a side project. I convinced him to swing by and hang out for a bit, promising him free fries. He was down. He said he'd be there in 10 or 15 minutes. While I waited, I kept my eyes on the hatchback. It still hadn't moved. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, a result of too much caffeine and too many late-night thrillers. When Ethan finally pulled into the lot, his headlights briefly washing over the hatchback, I felt a lot better. We both got out of our cars and began walking up the path. Before the parking lot fully receded from view, I shot a glance backwards. The hatchback was still there, but I saw all 4 doors open at once. 4 guys stepped out. They just stood there for a few seconds, looking at each other, not moving toward the path. They weren't even talking, just looking around at each other. It was freaky. I nudged Ethan, who immediately stiffened when he realized what I was looking at. Before they could see us clearly in the shadows, we continued walking up the path so that the lot was obstructed from view by the curve of the hill. Alarm bells were going off in my head, but Ethan, ever the optimist, didn't seem that concerned. He told me they were probably just going out to smoke or mess around. We kept walking, quickening our pace, and by the time we got to the top, the wide-open city view was enough to take my mind off things for a second. We always sat on this little rock wall that was supposed to keep people from wandering off the edge of the mountain. We sat there eating and talking like we used to. It was nice, a brief respite. Of course, that nice feeling didn't last very long. We heard the sound of talking and laughter quickly approaching us from the path below. We turned around to see three guys walking towards us, sharing what looked like a vape. They were acting friendly enough, calling up greetings, which definitely calmed my nerves a little. Instead of finding their own spot, though, they walked right up to us like they wanted to start a conversation. The guy with the vape was covered in tattoos and had a nose ring. He honestly looked pretty intimidating. He flashed half a smile before asking us if we wanted to hang out for a bit. We both said no politely, and one of the other guys laughed and called us lame, which Ethan scoffed at. My curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I blurted out a question about what they were doing at the quick stop earlier. The guy holding the vape dropped his smile instantly and narrowed his eyes like he was caught off guard by my specific question. His two friends did the same, staring at us with cold expressions. They didn't say anything for an uncomfortably long time, the silence broken only by the distant city noise. That's when I remembered that there had been 4 guys in that car, not 3. One of them was missing. At that point, I was fully prepared to run. I knew Ethan was thinking the same thing, shifting his weight nervously. Finally, the ringleader told us, with a practiced smoothness, that he worked nights there and that he had just gotten off. He pulled his hoodie up slightly to reveal the collar of a quick stop uniform shirt. I think because he knew we wouldn't have believed him otherwise. He then went on to say he came to the spot every day after work to unwind with his friends. While that definitely calmed me down a bit, something about this whole situation was terribly off. I caught Ethan's eye, and we both knew we needed to leave. We decided it was time to go. As we started walking down the path, maintaining a quick, steady pace, Ethan stopped and pointed frantically into the trees off the path. I followed his gaze and saw the 4th guy, half hidden in the darkness just a few feet away, paralleling the path. He was holding something, but I couldn't make out what it was. It looked long and thin, like a club or a heavy stick. I felt my heart start racing, a frantic drum against my ribs. The moment he saw us looking, he started moving toward the path. That's when we ran. We bolted down the path, glancing back once to see him burst out of the trees, followed by the 3 other guys close behind, their laughter now sounding predatory. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I could hear their footsteps getting closer, crashing through the underbrush, but I didn't look back again. We finally made it to the parking lot, dove into our cars, and floored out of there, tires spitting gravel. As I was speeding away, I could see those guys rushing to get in their car, one of them gesturing angrily. I didn't feel comfortable driving home out of fear that I'd be leading them right to my apartment. I called Ethan and told him we should meet back up on his street, a well-lit, busy area. We had a decent head start on them, and I don't think we were followed, but I wasn't taking any chances. When Ethan and I met back up, parked under a street lamp, we were still in shock about what the hell just happened. I don't know if they were trying to rob us or worse, the planned, coordinated movements suggested something more sinister. I didn't know what to think. Ethan showed me his phone and said he had snuck a picture of them while they weren't looking, a blurry but recognizable shot. He sent it to me, but I wasn't sure what to even do with it. I had off the next day, so I convinced Ethan to come with me back to the quick stop so we could at least report the employee. The next day, we approached a guy on the younger side who looked like a manager, in hopes that he'd listen to us. We showed him the picture and told him what happened, and his eyes widened with instant recognition and alarm. He told us something literally out of a horror movie. Apparently, that guy's girlfriend had also worked at that same quick stop and had dumped him a few months ago. He didn't take it well and would harass her while she was working and stalk her after her shifts, even after she quit. He obviously got fired and banned, but that didn't help. The police were involved shortly after, and there was a restraining order put in place. Apparently, he had been violating that restraining order because he was camping out in the parking lot, waiting for her or anyone associated with the place. Ethan and I were horrified. I have no idea why he decided to follow me, a random customer, but it was clear that he was unhinged and desperate. I'm praying that the police catch him violating the restraining order again, because then he'll actually be screwed. I just hope he doesn't recognize my car anywhere. It's only been a week, but I haven't been back to that quick stop or the park since. Hopefully, the police are able to do something, but that's out of my control. Forgive me if I don't remember every detail of the story. It happened a while ago. I grew up in Wayne, New Jersey. Not much goes on around here, so finding things to do can be a challenge. I was an architecture student at the time, and a few friends and I would sneak into and explore old abandoned buildings, not just for thrills but to study the structures. That's the sort of thing we did at that age. I didn't realize how popular that kind of stuff is until many years later. Apparently, lots of people like to explore abandoned buildings. I was about 20 years old then. Anyway, there was this abandoned hall, a former municipal building, that we'd been to a couple of times before. It was in Patterson. I actually remember the exact address, 410 Cypress Street. The place was creepy, built in the early 1900s with heavy stone. A fascinating but ominous structure. It was kind of our go-to spot for late-night inspiration and thrills. One fall evening, a few of us decided to hit the hall to sketch some structural elements and drink a little inside. It was a chilly night, and the air had that crisp bite to it. There were 6 of us, me, Kira, Devin, Marcus, Sam, and Priya. The hall sat behind an 8-foot chain-link fence, which we had to climb to get in. The doors were all boarded up, sealed with sheets of plywood and steel bolts, so we always went through a broken window on the side, near the old loading dock. Once you were inside, the first thing you noticed was the floor or lack of one. The entire first floor was just dirt and rubble. It looked like someone had ripped out the floorboards and subfloor years ago, likely for salvage, leaving only a hole in the center where a set of concrete stairs, surprisingly intact, led down to the basement. That's where we always ended up, down in the large, echoey basement. The basement had 3 rooms, branching off a central utility corridor. Only one had a heavy wooden door that could be closed. The other 2 just had wide, empty door frames. The first room we went into was the largest, a massive storage area. There wasn't much in it, just some old, rotting furniture, broken chairs, a busted couch with springs poking out, and piles of mildewed documents. I remember having to shush Marcus like 12 times because he was a lightweight, and the tiny bit of alcohol he had was making him really loud and antsy, his voice echoing too loudly. Being in such a big group was always a plus, though, and I felt much safer knowing we had numbers. We messed around for a while, shining our flashlights around, making sketches, drinking and laughing like we usually did. We might have had a speaker playing music low, but I don't fully remember. Out of nowhere, a door slammed. I literally jumped. That's how loud it was. A solid, resonant thud that echoed up the concrete stairwell. We froze, instantly sober, staring at each other with concerned expressions. At first, I thought one of us had closed the door by accident, maybe one of the lighter doors upstairs, but no one was near the closed door in the basement. Almost immediately, Kira, Devin, and Marcus made a break for it, sprinting up the stairs, their flashlights bouncing wildly, leaving me, Sam, and Priya behind. We were the fearless ones, always needing to see things through for the architectural experience. And none of us wanted to leave just yet. My heart was definitely pounding, I fully admit that, but I wasn't going to let the wind or a cheap scare freak me out. I could tell Sam and Priya were thinking the same thing, their faces pale but their eyes fixed on the source of the sound. I don't know if it was curiosity or sheer stupidity, but we decided to investigate. After standing in silence for a few minutes, listening only to our own ragged breathing, the 3 of us crept over to open the door that had slammed shut, the only closed door in the entire basement. Behind it was a small room, maybe an old utility closet. The first thing I saw was a battered, wooden dresser. The mirror on top of it was cracked in a spiderweb pattern, and there were red stains smeared across the surface. At first, I thought it was old, peeling paint or rust, something from the building's decay. But when I got closer, flashing my light over it, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't completely dry. The stains still had that sticky sheen to them, a viscous texture, like whatever it was hadn't been there for long. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up, prickling in the cold air, and I was having second thoughts about not leaving sooner. Someone, dare I say something, had recently been in this room. Then I saw the picture. There was an old photo on top of the dresser, tucked under the corner of the broken mirror, a black and white shot of a woman in a wedding dress. She was smiling, but there was something off about the angle, the shadow across her face. The whole thing gave me a bad, intensely personal feeling. I backed away quickly, turning to grab Sam, but just as I turned, we heard another noise. This time, it wasn't the door. It was a distinct scraping sound, like a heavy chair being dragged across the dirt floor, coming from one of the other rooms, the large room we had just been in. That's when Sam and Priya both decided they'd had enough, their faces etched with pure panic. I wasn't going to argue with them. We grabbed our stuff, dropped the flashlight in our haste, and ran out of there as fast as we could, scrambling up the concrete stairs. When we climbed back over the fence and hit the pavement outside the building, none of us said a word until we were halfway down the street. After jumping the fence, I turned around for one last desperate look, and I could swear I saw the silhouette of a person standing, just for a moment, in the broken window we had entered through. It was a shape that didn't belong to the building's architecture. I still pray that, by some minuscule chance, my mind was just playing tricks on me, the adrenaline making me see things, but I'll never know for sure. My friends and I never went back there together for as long as we remained friends. I've actually been back to that hall myself years later, though it wasn't a hall anymore by the time I got around to checking it out again. The entire block was redeveloped, and the old building was completely demolished. I still have no idea what we saw that night. I'm just glad my friends were there to witness it with me. Had I been alone, I might doubt this whole thing even happened. If anyone wants to do some digging, go ahead. I was never able to find out anything online about that address, but I wouldn't be surprised if that old municipal building has a history I don't know about.